40-45 minutes. And I will share some things that most of you would able to relate to, saying, okay, I know this thing, and that's good. Some things you may find something new, something that you are not aware about our epics, that is Ramayana and Mahabharata. And my objective is to share a few things which might provoke you. I mean, that is the whole idea, to make you think, come on, now, hey, I can live with this, I can live with this, but now what are you telling me? I never heard that. I don't think this is true. So if that happens, I think it really raises us from our slumber, makes us think that, okay, how come I never knew about this? Or does it make sense? Is it true? Can it be true? And that leads to the synthesis. As the term goes, vade vade jayate tattva bodho. Through this intellectual discussion, through this emotional discussion, we make progress, we get to know more. So with that, I'm going to start sharing. A number of you might have read my books, might have read my blogs, might have listened to my YouTube videos. So some portions might be a repetition in some fashion. This is all good. Can everyone see my screen? If somebody can confirm that.
Yes, Neelaj.
Okay,
yes.
very good. Okay, so the dating aspect is one aspect of our epics. If you look at the definition, so Mahabharata and Ramayana, they both are Itihas, Arsha Kavya, they are poetry. Okay, so the Itihas is told to us through poetry. And the reason many of our ancient Indian narratives texts are in a poetic form is because they are easy to chant and therefore they are easy to remember. And people used to remember these whole things by heart. I mean, the Rigveda was always followed in the Shruti fashion, but actually even that was true for the epics, and that was true for the Puranas, and that was true for many of our Samvitas and many of our Ayurvedic Grantha. Even in our times, I mean, right now, I know like 10 plus Ayurveda Acharya who are practicing Ayurvedic professionals, very modern looking. So what I'm saying is, it's not somebody sitting in a temple and, like just somehow remembering it. No, these are practicing Ayurveda Acharya and they know the Charak Samhita by heart. Okay. So these were remembered and that's why they were in a Kavya form. Now, what is the purpose of a Itihasa? There are many definitions, but they all agree essentially on the essence. So their statements may be different, but they agree on what the Itihas is. Just one definition that you may or may not have heard, which is to say, Dharmartha Kama Mokshanam Upadesham Samanvita Purva Vruttam Kathayuktam Itihasam Prachakshate. So this becomes a guidebook. Okay, this becomes like a say in engineering speak, like we have these handbooks. If we need certain data, we go there. Otherwise, we can operate with what we know here. It's a reference book. And for what purposes? Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha, the char Purushartha, the four Purushartha. And how is it done? Like all other ancient narratives, Indian texts are doing the same thing. But the Itihasa text like Mahabharata, Ramayana do it in a very specific fashion. Puranas are also somewhat similar, but they are still distinct from Mahabharata, Ramayana. So Itihasa does it in this way. It takes a Purva Vrutta, okay, the ancient events, the actual historical ancient events, it is making use of them. Purva Vruttam Katha Yuktam. It is told to us in a format that is educational, that is entertaining, okay, and that's enlightening. So it tries to combine this all three, and that is called Itihasa. So dating is one specific aspect of it, and it's a very important aspect because there is no text without context. Okay, so if I would have told you, for example, a statement before COVID, let's say, because not many people are traveling. But say last year, 2 years ago, I would have said, oh, today is what, 27th of February. Okay, last week, I mean, on 17th of February, I was in India. I traveled to 3 different places, and I came back 2 days ago. This statement would not surprise you at all. You said, okay, that's absolutely possible, because I am saying this statement today, like today meaning say 21st century. What if I would have made the same statement, let's say 400 years ago? Or I tell you a story of somebody from 400 years ago, like say Raja Shivaji's time, okay, or somebody of that time. And I said, well, so somebody came to America like 10 days ago, and now he is back in India. We would not agree to that statement. And that's what I mean by the context. We need the context of a time, context of a place, context of the technology available. And therefore, the dating aspect is a very significant aspect of our civilization. The reason I mention this, because many people also think, why do we need a dating? In fact, if you start reading Mahabharata and Ramayana, you will realize how much emphasis is placed by Rishi Valmiki, but also Rishi Vyasadeva on this dating business. And I'm going to share some of these things with you. But before that, I want to just quickly summarize a very high level, my work of say 25, 30 years. What you see is the timeline. The horizontal axis that you see is the time axis. On the left side, it goes in the past, right side is the future, the dotted arrow. Today is where we are today, 21st century. 0 is the starting point for the reference calendar that we use every day. Like we are saying, when are we meeting on a Zoom? 27 February 2021. That's the Gregorian reference calendar that we use. So that began around that 0. It was actually Julian calendar then. And then if you go beyond that, the minus 5K refers to 5000 BCE, before Common Era. 10,000 is 10,000 BC is 10,000 years before Common Era. So 5000 BCE means what? 7,000 years ago, approximately. So 5,000 plus 2020, that would be 7,000 plus years ago. Okay, 15,000 BC, 20,000 BC, and so on. So my work, I mean, I was always curious. My mother had taught me Bhagavad Gita, and that's where it started, just small curiosities. In India, it's not unusual. I mean, most of us can relate to this. Growing up, we get two kinds of extreme things. One is like everything is there in our Shastra. And the other statement is there is nothing in the Shastra. Okay, those are kind of the extreme views we hear. Of course, we hear things in between. And it's Indian tradition, the Hindu Dharma tradition, Sanatan tradition is the only one that one of the foundation is the freedom of thought. Like we are not asked to take anything blindly. So from that, my curiosity began. And when I was studying in Canada, I ran into one specific reference of Mahabharata. It happened to be astronomy reference. If those of you who are listening, if you can mute yourself, so that would be good. I won't get that in between noise. Yeah. And so with that, it started with this one verse, but then something happened. I actually very naively thought I'm going to figure this out, the mystery behind this one shlok, maybe over a weekend. But then it took me 15 years, like from 1995 to 2009. But the good news out of that was that motivated me when I finally figured it out in 2009. Then I said, wow, this is fascinating. And I'm going to show you what it is. So then I started reading Mahabharata. I was studying it, but I was not getting something to progress further for 15 years. But as soon as that happened in 2009, it was essentially 2 years. Like I extracted 300 plus astronomy descriptions. Now, not to confuse with astrology. Now, they are very, very close because the basis is a Khagol Shastra. But astrology is like a Phala Jyotish, whereas the astronomy is a Jyotish in the sense of the study of the planets and stars and sky and everything. So I extracted those 300 plus references, and the way we solve a crossword puzzle, or the way we solve like a jigsaw puzzle, putting the pieces together, or like solving the Rubik's Cube. But in this case, doing it in the way we do science. Like Richard Feynman used to use the term, let's do some physics. So I'll use the term and I say, let's do some Itihasa, in that style, scientific fashion I tried to put together this evidence, it led me to one specific year. And actually, Mahabharata evidence will not take you anywhere else. Now, if you make a mistake, it will take you anywhere else. It leads you to 5561 BC as the year of Mahabharata war. Then I repeated the same thing for Valmiki Ramayana. This was not in a series. I was also studying Ramayana, but it was the Mahabharata that resulted in the positive outcome first. Surprisingly, in Valmiki Ramayana, there are many more astronomy descriptions that actually surprised me. The reason I'm saying this, we should not go by the size of the book, but actually Valmiki Ramayana is like 1/4 or 1/5 of the size of Mahabharata. But it has almost twice the number of astronomy descriptions in comparison to Mahabharata. And again, if you solve this in a jigsaw puzzle fashion, it leads one to a very specific year, 12,209 BCE, for the year of Ram Ravan Yuddha. So I ended up publishing this in 2011, my first book, 2014, the book on Ramayana. And then I published another one on the Bhishma Nirvana. But very recently, and when I say recently, maybe 5 years ago now, this Professor Balram Singh from this Institute of Advanced Science, with whom I am now an honorary faculty, he happened to see my YouTube video about this, that one observation that I started in Canada, Arundhati Vasishta. And so he said, well, this is phenomenal. He loved it, what I had done. He says, have you done anything related to Rigveda dating and anything related to river Saraswati? So this was like end of 2016. And my work on Saraswati was very indirect because Saraswati references are there in Mahabharata, like 100 plus descriptions of Saraswati are there in the Mahabharata, and very few, but they are also there in the Ramayana. And I was reading on and off Rigveda, but that's not my expertise. Not that Ramayana or Mahabharata was my expertise either. So I started looking at it, and what I just briefly, I would say it's approximate dating. But what we know is this: definitely the older portion of Rigveda, the Rigveda has 10 mandalas, now in English we say, but 10 mandal. So they are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But in terms of which one are the oldest, which one are the youngest, the sequence is not like 1 through 10. The sequence is like 6, 3, 7, 4, 2, 5, 8, 9, and a long gap, and then mandal 10. So the oldest portions like mandal 6, 3, 7, 4, 2, and I'm not saying necessarily all the suktas and all the ruchas, but significant number of them using the Saraswati river evidence. I'm talking of a hard empirical evidence, and also now astronomy. But that time when I did 2016, I couldn't find, there was astronomy evidence. I could not use it to date it that time. Now, some of my co-researchers, some of you would know, like Mrs. Rupa Bhattiji, if you have listened to her talks also. So now we are working on certain things, and it's allowing us to go back to like 40,000 BC and so on, even beyond that time. But that time, what I could do was that, or something that I want to share with all of you. So if you just remember this portion, then I would say our today's session was worthwhile. Because right now, let us say, if anybody asks us, like, hey, this in your Indian civilization, Hindu civilization, how old is it? Of course, we would say millions and millions of years, and Satya Yuga, and Brahma, and Kalpa, and Manvantara. That is one thing. But in general, we would also say 5,000 years. Oh, it's very old, 5,000 years. Now that 5,000 is a absolutely very lousy, something that is a very tamasic, very careless answer. If somebody asks us based on what, we may not be able to give a good answer. And that is actually correct, So if there is only one thing I want you to take out of this, in any conversation, you should have somebody ask you, how old is your civilization? With a full confidence, backed by tons and tons of evidence. And I'm going to show you right here, what I'm showing you is like 1,000 plus data points. Okay, so Mahabharata had 300 plus astronomy observations, Ramayana had 600 plus. And if you look at the Saraswati descriptions from these two Itihasa texts, plus text from Rigveda, we are looking at 1,000 plus specific data points. And in a scientific fashion, they tell us that we, Indian civilization, is definitely more than 24,000 years old. Okay, that's something we should be able to say with a confidence. You may not be able to articulate. So somebody says, well, based on what evidence? Well, I hope that you read my work, and not just my work of many other researchers. But you can always say, well, hey, I'm not the expert here, but I feel confident. But you want to talk to this guy, write to Nilesh, this, you can perfectly say that. I will encourage you to do that. Now, this is what I started with: astronomy, and hydrology, like river science. This was like back in 2011, 14, and 16. But since then, I have found evidence pouring in or pouring out from dozen plus different disciplines of science, thousands and thousands of different research papers, empirical data, and that all supports this timeline. Okay, so that's just a quick summary. So anyone, if somebody tells you, because that is the misinformation that gets into our social media, that gets into our Facebook and Twitter and whatnot, they will say, oh, but he only used astronomy. First thing, when somebody says he only used astronomy, the person doesn't even understand astronomy, and person doesn't understand Mahabharata and Ramayana, because they don't know how rich is the Mahabharata evidence or Ramayana evidence in astronomy. Okay, so astronomy evidence in these texts. But all this list that you are saying, if the evidence exists, and that evidence can be matched with the descriptions in the Mahabharata or Ramayana, they all support and take us to these dates also. They validate Mahabharata, they validate Ramayana, they validate Rigveda, because some of the, not some of, many of the description, majority, all the descriptions of these texts, there is no way in the world anyone said 200 years ago, I'm talking 100 years ago, 200 years ago, sitting there and imagining and writing it right away. The Saraswati was flowing this way and Satluj turned this way in these many thousand years ago. It's just impossible. Much of the data that I'm showing you here, at least the fields, has just become available only in the last 150, 200 years. But these grantha are with us for thousands and thousands of years. Even the oldest copies will go back to 1500 years, 2000 years, and so on. Okay, now we'll get into the dating of Mahabharata and Ramayana. The question to ask is, do we have what it takes? And the reason I mention that is many times people will listen to read a book, they might watch a video, they may listen to a talk like this. And some of us may have this reaction, and nothing wrong with it. This is, bhai, kuch samajh mein nahi aaya. I mean, I get these comments all the time. Nilesh ji, good talk, but kuch samajh mein nahi aaya. Now, that is very real. But if that happens to you, don't feel disheartened, but don't necessarily blame me either. Okay, like you, to understand a certain subject, suppose if you want to know something about the Bhagavad Gita, so I mean, you can use a translation, but thoda to Sanskrit aana padega, right? Some basic shabd to samajhne padenge, right? Yoga ka artha samajhna padega, atma ka artha kya hai, sharir ka artha kya hai, right? Bhakti, yoga, jnana, something like this. Same thing, if you have to understand how the dating happens, then some scientific acumen is required, some logical reasoning is required, some background knowledge is required, and then also you need some softer skills, and I'm going to talk about that. So what is that background knowledge, or what is that hard scientific method that we need to know? This is our scientific method. The best philosopher of science from the Western world, Sir Karl Popper, he describes the scientific method like this. He says, scientific method is a triangulation of explanation, or that evidence, explanation, prediction, and testing. Okay, so prediction is that inference in the context of a theory and in the context of a background knowledge. So you start with some tough problem in any given discipline that nobody has solved. To solve that problem, you propose a theory. And once you propose a theory, you get multiple predictions based on that theory. One of the prediction is a solution to the problem. Okay, that's how you propose the theory. And then you take these predictions and you start comparing them with the observations, existing data, new data, experimental data, observations. And if they match, then you say, oh, okay, this theory looks promising. At least I don't want to reject this theory. And then you solve that problem. That leads to more problems of newer complexity, higher complexity. And then you go through this cycle. It's an iterative cycle. You also need some other things like a Vijnana Buddhi. Okay, these are words from our Darshana, Shad Darshanas, okay, or scientific acumen. You also need a Tantra Yukti, how to set up a problem, how to think of a solution. Like, Tulsa being the oil capital, I would say, there are always these new problems coming, new types of stuff that you find. And how do we go about solving it? You need to use your ingenuity to come up with some solution. Every solution may or may not work. In fact, that's why it took me 15 years to figure out that one shlok and its meaning and its actually validation in a scientific fashion. You also need a logical reasoning, because sometimes you might do the experiment right, you might have the correct data, but you may draw the wrong inference. Okay, so these are some of the things that we definitely need, and that actually goes to the foundation of Sanatan Dharma. Vichar Swatantriya, freedom of thought, Achar Sahishnutta, meaning endurance in conduct. We don't give up. We don't give up easily. We should not give up. Niti Dharma, Tarka Shastra, I'm talking of logic, and I'm using the Niti like a morals. Why? Because our objective should not be to be in a limelight quickly, just get some people will say, oh wow, this guy appears like he has done some great work. Our goal should be for the truth. We may be successful, we may not be successful, and even when we are not successful to solve that specific problem, what we learn is tremendous. Something else we need, the softer side, and this is the Shraddha, Samshaya and Jitnyasa. See, this is a very lethal combination. Huh? Like, for example, think of a samosa, vada pav, or samosa and a chutney, So samosa, we have some spicy alus, and then fried stuff. Then we have a sweet chutney, but we also have a hot chutney. It's something like this. We need a Shraddha, but we also need a Samshay, and we also need a Jitnyasa. Okay, so think of this. What is this Samshaya thing? If it's a संशय of mind means अरे भाई ऐसा कैसा हो सकता है, this is ऐसा तो हो ही नहीं सकता. That is a संशय of a mind, and Krishna says that can lead to destruction. संशयात्मा विनश्यति. But संशय of a buddhi is very important. He says, okay, so Vyasadeva is saying something, Valmiki is saying something, Valmiki is talking of a Pushpak Viman. I don't see any evidence of it. So what is it? How they would have, what fuel they might have used? Okay, I mean, was it there? And how can is there any way I can prove it? I mean, that is the sanshaya of a buddhi. Like, you're asking questions even to yourself, but in order to solve the problem, not to say that this is not possible, nothing needs to be done. Okay. The next one that leads to the jnana trupti. Okay, a full satisfaction from your curiosity. The other one is a shraddha. Unless you have a shraddha, you are not able to do anything. Like, say, number of you who are present for this talk, okay, there is some shraddha into Mahabharata, Ramayana, into our things. Otherwise, why waste time here? There are many other interesting things to be done in life, right? But shraddha can go from tamas to sattva. But the point is, whether shraddha is in the right things or a wrong things, shraddha leads to lot of karya shakti, lot of karma shakti, lot of work gets done. Even a simple example I'll give you, the tamasi shraddha is like, somebody may have a faith in something that is wrong for humanity, like a terrorism, but they are willing to do some daring things because of it. So it's not a good thing, but shraddha can lead you to that. So there is a shraddha of a different kind, sattva, raja, tama. We want to cultivate sattva kind. Then the third one is a jidnyasa, which is a jidnyasa. I don't want to translate as a curiosity, but we can do that. But that is also of a two kind. Just the idle curiosity is not enough. I listened somewhere, I heard somewhere, I read somewhere, something happened. For example, think of these posts that go around, some Vigraha Murti that is 40,000 year old. Many people just send me these emails, says, Nileshji, is this true? Now, they are very innocently asking, so I just respond to them in some ways. But honestly, my initial reaction is to just block them and move on with my work. Because, that is a very tamasic kind, I mean, just from the listening to it, you should have some inkling that maybe this is not true. And if you want to check it, you should go and investigate on your own. Ask the question, would you, I mean, just jokingly, I say this, ask the question to yourself, that particular news, like say some Vigraha Murti of 40,000 year old. Now I'm telling you, I have evidence to show Indian civilization going back to 40,000 BC, but somebody sending me Vigraha Murti and some Vigraha Murti news saying was found somewhere. It is a fake news. I mean, we have to have these fake indicators in our mind. The question to ask is, would you be willing to take your 50% of your wealth and willing to bet on that news? Ask that question. Many times those answers come right away to you. The point is, you want the kind of curiosity that leads to solving the real problems of life. Okay, they can be the material problem, dharma, artha, kama, moksha. Okay, so that should lead to some answer. And we'll talk about in the question answer, hopefully, why even bother for the dating. Hopefully that's very clear to you. But if not, we'll talk about it. And therefore, I gave an example. How a wrong narration can destroy the unity of a nation, can destroy the unity among people, can take away people from their roots, and they can easily become a slave to somebody else. Okay, these are very serious things that can happen if we don't understand our itihas right, our history right. And that jnana of a right kind, purpose driven, can lead to phalaprapti. So we need these softer skills also, very important. Okay, all right, let's get into Mahabharata. I already told you that we have this scientific method that we are going to follow. Now, as soon as you hear scientific method, many times we also hear this discussion, oh, the scientific method is Western, that is modern, whereas our grantha say something. No, no, no. Please, guys, I mean, if any one of you have this misjudgment, come out of it. What I just told you, Sir Karl Popper describes the logic of scientific method. He says, what is that? Triangulation of explanation, prediction, testing in the context of a theory and in the context of a background knowledge. If you go to our Shad Darshana, say for example, Sage Gautama's Nyaya Darshan, he says exactly same thing and even better and much shorter. He says Pratyaksha, Anumana, Upamana, Shabda Pramanani. In these 5 words, he's just explained that what Sir Karl Popper said with that triangulation. I mean, what Sir Karl Popper said is also very impressive. If you go to Patanjali's Yoga Sutra, in a 3 statements, he tells you what is the scientific method, how to know the truth, how to get to the false knowledge, and how we should not take something just on the face value, but we should do the required investigation, be serious about it. Okay, not just like the fake news that go around in the WhatsApp and this. Patanjali is saying it thousands of years ago. He says, Pratyaksha Anumana Agama Pramanani. That is how we get to the truth. If you don't follow this method, he says, Viparyayo Mithya Jnanam Atadrupa Pratishtam. If you do exactly opposite of this, it leads to Mithya Jnana. Okay. And then he says, third one. These come in a sequence in a Samadhi path. Shabda Jnananupati Vastu Shunyo Vikalpa. Shabda Jnan. You just heard somewhere. I read somewhere. Somebody told me. Somebody forwarded to me. Okay, I'm not saying reject it, but Shabda Jnananupati Vastu Shunyo. There has to be evidence to back it up. And evidence is not another person's statement. Their evidence has to be in the pramana, in the form of Pratyaksha, Anumana, Upamana, Shabda. Do you know what Krishna says in Bhagavad Puran? Bhagavad Puran is all about bhakti. So many times people who will take the excuse of a bhakti and says, "Bhai, hame ye kuch nahi chahiye." Krishna is saying, "Kuch nahi chahiye nahi." If you are a bhakta, he is telling Uddhava. Uddhava is one of the greatest bhakta. He says, once now that you are a bhakta, you should have your eyes open. He says, Shruti Pratyaksham Aitiyam Anumanam Chatushtayam Pramaneshu Anavasthanat Viparyat Vikalpat Savirajyate. Before investigating a certain thing and validating it, how do you validate? Not just 3 ways, 4 ways. Shruti, Pratyaksha, Aitiya, Anumana. Okay. So even a bhakta is expected to go through this very solid approach. Back to Mahabharata. So what is my theory? The problem was that one verse, and I'll tell you what that problem was. To solve this, I said, what if, and I'm not the first one, by the way, to propose a theory like this. This is what if all the descriptions that are given in the Mahabharata are actually true and true of the Mahabharata times. So I put the theory like this. This is a conjecture. Huh? This is a guess. That's how science is done. That's how Nyaya Darshana says. Okay, that's how you have a problem. You propose a solution and then you test it. So my theory was all astronomy descriptions of the Mahabharata text are actual, factual, visual observations of the Mahabharata times of the sky, if it is astronomy. And then, as I told you, I extracted every single astronomy observation I could find. They amounts to 300 plus. Then I objectively, scientific fashion, I tested them. What does that mean, objective fashion? The way I'm describing, using a mathematical calculation in astronomy or using astronomy software based on our latest astronomy data, what I am claiming, you should be able to see it. Any one of you listening to it should be able to see it with some background of astronomy, some background of Mahabharata. You don't have to blindly take it just because I'm saying it. And neither you should take it blindly. That is what that line 3 is, objective testability. Okay, it's like testing a gulab jamun. One tested here, and if I Haldiram gulab jamun, and if I send a package and I said, yeah, these are delicious, try those, and you try those and you say, yeah, they are delicious, so everyone should able to test it. And then logically drawing the inferences. And what do we need as a background knowledge? Actually, very simple, straightforward. All the knowledge of astronomy, related knowledge, and the text of Mahabharata. That's it. So what did it give us? Okay, so I extracted all the references. Now, because it's a Arsha Kavya, because it's a poetry, okay, both Mahabharata, Ramayana, the references come in the form of what? They come as a nimitta, like signs. They come as a upamana, analogies, metaphors, similes, because that's what happens in a kavya, right? We might say that the lady's beautiful face was looking like a full moon, and so on. And alankar, it comes in the form of poetic embellishments. Okay, so just keep that in mind. So now the next step, this is called the part of a Vijnana Buddhi. Okay, so suppose if we are cooking, we just don't mix all the ingredients required together and just cook them. No, there is a method to madness, right? Certain things go first. We heat the oil or ghee, whatever it is. Then certain spices go first. There is a sequence to it. Then the certain vegetable goes. We stir them. There is a time when we add salt. There is a time when we add water. There is a time when we cover it. And there is a time when we remove it. There is a time when we stir it. It's the same thing. Okay, so classification of the evidence at a very high level without taking you into the technicalities of astronomy. The evidence in the blue is what tells you approximately where to search for the year of Mahabharata war. And then the evidence that I'm showing you into the orange actually helps you precisely find the location. So let's say we are going to Niagara Fall, like somebody starting from India. Where should that person go? Well, fly to America or Canada, right? US or Canada. Then where should that person go? Go to the area of the 5 lakes, then look for the Lake Erie and Lake Ontario, follow the river path, and then the person may end up at the Niagara Fall. But just the very fact the person has to come to North America, along the Canada-USA border, that kind of information is coming from this blue evidence. Approximately where should one look for the date of Mahabharata? The same logic we'll use for Ramayana also. Okay, all right. And so now you might have heard that I'm going to give you one date. Actually, I gave you the date, 5561 BC for Mahabharata, 12,209 BC for Ramayana. But number of you are very curious individuals, and I'm very confident you have heard many other people giving many other dates. Okay, just for Mahabharata, the dates range from 400 CE, like somebody saying only Mahabharata was not a real history. It was only written 1600 years ago, like Professor Hopkins of Harvard University, or Sheldon Pollock of Columbia says like written in 150 BC. And you ask them based on what? They say, oh, I just feel like it. I mean, I'm at Columbia, professor. Why do I need to give you any evidence? I'm a professor at Columbia or Harvard. Isn't that enough? Okay, I mean, that is the thing. And unfortunately, many of us are busy making these chairs, and then these people come and do destroy our history. So that's a lesson for us. Hopefully we take it. But here, even for our researchers who also end up with many dates, they range from like a 400 BC to 7,300 BC. Why it's such a variation? Just one good example, you might have seen this. A drunkard has lost his coin. So the cops comes and says, where did you drop it? And he says, well, I dropped it 2 blocks away. And then the cop says, but why are you looking for it here? And then the drunkard says, that is because the light is very good here. Okay, now that's of course a foolish thing to do, right? A mistake. But many Mahabharata researchers have inadvertently, and sometimes just because lacking this scientific acumen, they have done this mistake. We get many such dates. So looking at that separation of evidence, okay, number of you, if you have used the vernier caliper, that is a good metaphor to understand why the evidence needs to be separated in this fashion. Suppose we want to, those of you who have seen it, we want to measure the dimension of something. The vernier caliper has 2 scales, right? One is approximate and another one is a fine one. If we make a mistake in getting the approximate wrong, then it doesn't matter the secondary scale, how accurate we measure something, we are going to get an answer which will be very precise and wrong. So that approximate, the first blue evidence is very important before we get to the orange evidence. That is the point of this picture. Now I'm going to take away the complexity of astronomy and going to tell you how that date comes into being. Again, we go back to our time axis, 21st century. Okay, that one observation that I told you that where my journey began in Canada with journey for the Mahabharata dating was this verse. It said just before the war, Vyasadeva is telling Dhritarashtra many things, many astronomy related things, many other things. He's saying, well, see, this is not looking good. Do you want to stop the war? Try stopping a war. But Dhritarashtra is determined. But anyways, during this list, Vyasadeva says one thing. He says, so many things I'm saying. I'm observing the sky for long time, day and night, during the morning, during the evening, at night, during the day. One thing I'm noticing is what this. He says thousands of things, hundreds of things. One thing he says, Ya Chaisha Visuta Rajas Trailoke Sadhu Sammata Arundhati Tayapesha Vasishta Prashtata Pruta. If you know the Saptarshi, there are 7 stars there, and then the one is a 8 star, small star next to Vasishta. So he's saying Vasishta and Arundhati, those 2 stars, and if we observe those in our times, Vasishta comes first and then Arundhati follows. So anytime you can see it at night, if you can see it, you'll find Vasishta is ahead and Arundhati is behind. That's how they go around the North Pole. Interestingly, Vyasadeva is saying at the time of Mahabharata war, it is the Arundhati who is walking ahead, Vasishta is behind. Now that was that big deal. So that's why it took me 15 years. Okay. Actually, once you know the answer, it's not a big deal, but that's true about all scientific discoveries. The outcome was when I finally figured it out, this is the only time, guys, after 11,000 BC and before 4500 BC, that is the only time when Arundhati can be seen walking ahead of Vasishta. After 4500 BC, that is to say last 6,500 years, Arundhati cannot be seen walking ahead of Vasishta. So now if you take the Vijnana Buddhi, if you take the Tantra Yukti, the way I figured it out, and if you take the Tarka Shastra, what does this tell us? If that statement of Vyasa is correct, the Shabda Pramanya with the Pratyaksha Pramanya, that is what I showed using astronomy, then the Mahabharata war is only possible more than 6,500 years ago between these 2 dates. Now what happened is 10 years after I published my book, and this is very good spirit, Siddhartha Chabra, he's an individual in Michigan area. He wanted to test mine to see, does it make sense? I mean, whatever I'm claiming, is it true? And that's what we have to do. So he did it. He used the latest data, and actually he came up with a slightly different dates, but even a tighter interval, which is even better. Because just for reference, I'll show you where is that year of the Mahabharata war. Okay, but is this all? No, because this doesn't tell us 5561 BC. If you use the Bhishma Nirvana evidence, and it's just amazing evidence, okay? Very, very rich, 6, 23, 60, hundreds of references from the Mahabharata text. That tells you that Bhishma was on the bed of arrows, Sharashaya, for more than 92 days. And you will say, so what? I mean, 92, whatever that number is. Astronomically, it's very important. You take that 92 days and you put the other constraints of the lunar month, Kartika, Margashirsha, Magha, and all that. And it tells you something very beautiful, okay, even more impressive than Arundhati. Do you know what it does? That Bhishma Nirvana evidence tells you that the Mahabharata war can only happen between 7,000 BC and 4700 BC. I'll fast forward. If you go through other evidence, combine that Bhishma Nirvana with evidence of the moon's phases and positions through the 18 days of the war. So what you see in the right side below is the actual physical references from the Mahabharata. That gives you even another interval, nicer interval. If you start using the information from Mahabharata text about the Tithi, Paksha, Masa, Rutu, seasons, everything, then it gives you another interval. And actually you come up with like 1500, 1600 years interval. That is the only interval you can search for the year of Mahabharata war. That has still not given us an exact year, by the way, guys, but it has given us a 1500, 1600 years interval. So how do we find this out? Again, it's an astronomically technical subject, so don't want to take you there. I would encourage you to read my books, watch my videos, read my blogs, and so on. But as a metaphorically, I want to explain how that works and how powerful, how rich is the evidence of the Mahabharata. And then I'll quickly walk you through Ramayana, because exactly same method, so it won't take time, okay? I'll do Ramayana in like 5 minutes or 3 minutes. Imagine this puzzle, huh? Now, because of the time and because we are not doing the two-way communication, I'm going to give you the answer. But imagine this puzzle, which is what? There are 20 sticks. When I was young, we used to play with a matchbox stick, you know, the India, the matchbox there. So you put those sticks and what you see is like 7 squares of the same size. I mean, they're square, so they're same size. This is like a puzzle. And I'll tell you why I'm showing you this example of a puzzle. Now, suppose if I ask you, this is a puzzle, take any of those 3 segments from this particular piece, then reapply them meaningfully and turn these 7 squares into 5 squares of exactly the same size that you see. No change of size, and no segment should be hanging idle. Everything should be used meaningfully. Your typical response would be, some people who love these puzzles, they can do it in like next 2 minutes or so. Other people will say this is impossible, and some people will take some time. I'm going to go fast and give you the answer. Okay, so you owe me one now. So if you remove these 3, the figure will look like this. Okay, and now we have 3 hanging segments. We are going to reapply them. We can reapply them like this. Now look what happened. We turn them from 7 to 5, and every segment is used meaningfully. This is a puzzle. And why did I show this to you? Because Mahabharata is a puzzle. If you remember the story of Mahabharata, you can take this as a metaphorical story. You can take that as a factual story. It's up to you. The important point is to understand the nature of Mahabharata text. So when Vyasadeva wanted to write, and Mahabharata text tells us it was written about like 18 years after the Mahabharata war, when Dhritarashtra and Kunti and Gandhari went to the forest. Okay, so Aryan Ashrama Vasika Parva. And it tells us, so therefore Vyasadeva sat down to write this about 18 years after the Mahabharata war, and it took him 3 years to write it. And as the story goes, again, as I said, you can take it metaphorically, you can take it factually, it's really up to you. But don't forget the important point, the nature of Mahabharata text. So Vyasadeva invoked, he wanted a very expert typewriter. I'm just saying this jokingly, of course. So he invited Bhagwan Ganesh, he came there. Bhagwan Ganesh put a condition. He said, I'll do it on one condition, that there should be no need for me to wait while you're trying to figure out what to say next. And Vyasadeva, that great Rishi, he said, okay, granted, done. But I have a counter condition. When I say something to you, you cannot write it, you cannot type it until you understand what it is. Okay, so he just used this, and that's how they both worked together, and the Mahabharata Grantha was done. And right there in the Adi Parva, when this story comes, it says now the nature of Grantha that was ready. It says, Grantham Granthi Tada Chakre Munir Gudam Kutuhala. What is the nature of this Grantha? It is full of twists. It is Granthi, that is the twist. It is full of curiosities, and it is full of mysteries, and it's full of puzzles. And just to show you a flavor of it, I'm going to show you, not so much solve it for you, but just to show you how rich, how precise, and how accurate, and how detailed is the astronomy evidence of the Mahabharata text. What you're seeing is Earth at the center, and imagine you're looking at the sky. Those numbers 1 through 27 are the 20 or 28 rather, are the 27 or 28 nakshatra. Here I have given Mrugashirsha as a number 1. 7 and 8 are Purva and Uttara Falguni. 22, 23 are Purva and Uttara Bhadrapada. And number 15 is Mula Nakshatra, total of 27. Just to give you a flavor, and then we'll be done with this, and then additional 2 minutes for Ramayana. Here we have, for example, description of a Saturn. What does Vyasa say in the Mahabharata? He says, Bhagam Nakshatra Akramya Surya Putrena Pidate. Surya Putra is a Shani. It is doing Akraman on Bhaga Nakshatra. What is Bhaga Nakshatra? Purva and Uttara Falguni, 8 and 9. Then it describes Mars. It says, Magha Swangarako Vakra. Magha Nakshatra, and Angarak means Mars. Near Nakshatra Magha, Angarak went Vakra. Okay, just remember the word Vakra. So that is that O I am putting it for oblique motion. Then it says, what Mars did near Magha is the same thing that the Jupiter, Brahaspati, did near Nakshatra Shravan. Shravan Echa Brahaspati. Again, Mars did the same thing, that Vakra thing, where around nakshatra 13 and 14. What are they? Anuradha and Jeshta. Krutva Changarako Vakra Jeshtaya Madhusudana Anuradha Prarthayate Maitram Samshayamanniva. That same Mars did something else near nakshatra Chitra. Nunam Madhvayam Krishna Kuruna Samupastitam Visheshenahi Varshneya Chitra Pidayate Graha. Around number 10. If you look at another astronomy reference, it says Samvatsara. You can see, even if you don't understand Sanskrit, you will able to relate to some of these words. Samvatsara, for a year. Samvatsara sthainancho graha prajvalito ubho. Vishakhayo samipasto bruhaspati shanascharo. Bruhaspati and Shani were settled for up to a year near Nakshatra Vishakha, number 12, and they were shining brightly. If some of you know astronomy, that refers to the retrograde motions of those planets. Okay, let's look at few more retrograde motions. But before that, there are many other descriptions, such as like the first day of the war, the sun and the moon together were giving trouble to nakshatra number 28 Rohini. Shani, Saturn was also doing that to that nakshatra Rohini. Sometimes the nakshatra is known by the devata of that nakshatra. Like for Rohini, the Prajapati is the devata. So where it says Prajapatyam cha nakshatram grahat tikshna mahadyuti shanashchara pideti pidiyan pranikodikam. On the 17th day, when the Karna died, Mahabharata describes Jupiter doing the same thing to Rohini, the way sun and moon together were doing to Rohini on the first day of the war. Just imagine the descriptions, okay? Multiple descriptions like a crossword puzzle. If you get one word wrong, you will get the whole thing wrong. Same thing with the jigsaw puzzle. If you get few pieces wrong, you cannot solve the jigsaw piece puzzle. Okay, same thing here. Think of this as a jigsaw pieces. Then we have a more descriptions of a Mercury and whatnot. Now here again I put the Mars, that red planet there. Beautiful description of its retrograde motion at the time of the Mahabharat war. It says Dhruvam Prajulitam Ghoram Apasavya Pravartate Chitra Swatantare Chaiva Deshtita Parushagraha. Chitra and Swati, those are nakshatra number 10 and 11. Now, I have not written the names and you have to take this on the Shraddha, okay? But you can go back and verify. Was Nilesh telling me the truth or he was just trying to impress us with Sanskrit? Okay, you can go back and check those. That is a beautiful description of a retrograde motion of Mars happening near Chitra and Swati. Then it says Vakranu Vakram Krutvam Cha Shravane Pavaka Prabha Brahma Rashi Samavrutta Lohitango Vyavastita. After that, that Lohitango, meaning Mars, came near Nakshatra Shravan, that is 18, and then aligned itself along Brahma Rashi, which is Abhijit, which is Vega, on the first day of the war. That is this Nakshatra 19, that Abhijit. It can be included, it can be excluded. I'll give you one more and then fast forward. The similar retrograde motion is also given for Venus. It says Shukra Proshtapade Purve Samarya Vishampate Uttaretu Parikramya. At least you can understand the word Parikrama. It says the Venus came near Purva Bhadrapada, Proshte Purva Bhadrapada, okay? Shukram Proshtapade Purve. Purve Proshtapade is the Purva Bhadrapada. And what did it do? It turned to the north and made a Parikrama. Uttaretu Parikramya Sahita Pratyudikshite. You can do this. Now, if you try to put this together, all that I'm showing you, and there are many, many more, okay, by the way, 35 plus, they all take you to 5561 BC and no other year. Now, what this is done, the evidence is so powerful, but as I said, there are 130 plus different Mahabharata claims. So what I'm going to show you next, it's a political picture, but my aim is not to show politics. Doesn't matter which party in India, we are all still Indians, which you support. But I'm going to show you something interesting. If you come across some other Mahabharata researchers and he says, well, yeah, I understand you heard something from Nilesh, but that's not correct. You can definitely ask these questions to that person and see what their answers are. Even the answer is no to any of these questions, that claim is wrong, because that will not support the Mahabharata evidence. And so what has happened, this is humorously, I'm putting this picture. So there are 130 plus claims. Number of these people, they don't agree with each other. But I'll tell you this, and you can see those of you who are following me in a social media or otherwise, when the discussion comes to 5561 BC, you will see even these people with totally different processes, different methods, or even a lack of methods, but they will just like, just like this political opportunism, you'll see they holding hand with each other, trying to fight 5561 BC. And actually it's a good thing. Okay, vade jayate tattva bodho. Okay, it's a good thing. So anyway, this is just a humor. quickly I'll take you through Ramayana. Everything same, okay, same method, only the theories, all astronomy observations of the Valmiki Ramayana are actual factual visual observations of the sky of Ramayana times. References, objective testing, background knowledge, astronomy plus Valmiki Ramayana. Very important that for dating we use Valmiki Ramayana and not other Ramayana. They have other purpose, like Tulsi Ramayana is great, okay, Kamba Ramayana is great. There are Ramayanas, many Ramayanas all over India, and that's all fine, okay, Ananda Ramayana. But for a historical purpose, it has to be Valmiki Ramayana, the original Ramayana. Okay. Again, similar thing. We split the evidence, same purpose, same logic. Okay. Now, out of those 600, I'm going to show you 6. Just to tell you, even if we use those 6 references, it takes us to 13 millennium BC, that is 14,000 years ago. Now, our Ram Navami will come in just few days. Ram Mandir is being built finally. Okay, great. Jai Sri Ram. Ram Navami we will celebrate in a couple of months' time. But now when we do it in the month of Chaitra, it's very hot. In India, it's very hot, but even here, right? On the other hand, if you look at the Valmiki Ramayana descriptions of the month of Chaitra, it was a beautiful time. It was a very pleasant times, all greenery. The forests are blooming with flowers, okay? And, but you'll say, well, right now also we can get flowers in Vasanta Rutu, especially in America or even in India. The problem is, remember, the Ramayana did not happen in our times. And if you understand the precession of the Earth's axis, the astronomy phenomenon, we have to go backwards and find another time when lunar month of Chaitra could have these descriptions of Valmiki Ramayana. And for that, the minimum that we have to go back is 14,000 years. You can go back 26,000 years, that is possible. But the minimum we have to go is a 14,000 years. And there are many reasons why you cannot go beyond 14,000. We may not have a time today unless you ask me in a question answer session. I would answer that question. The descriptions of a Chaitra from the lunar month of Chaitra from Valmiki Ramayana are those of the times that we see in India, especially tropical India, like a monsoon, just after the monsoon, like think of August, September, October. Iti Bruvandamudita Pratyanandan Rupan Rushtimantam Mahamegam Nardanta Iva Barhina. Okay, the peacocks are dancing and the rain, the cloud, the dark clouds are up there. Or this is the observation from Nashik in Maharashtra, the Panchoti, where Lakshman is saying the Hemanta Rutu, the sun is setting on a nakshatra Pushya. In our times, sun sets on a nakshatra Mula during the Hemanta Rutu, like November, December. So again, if you use the astronomy, it takes you back to 14,000 years. There is a reference to Bharata taking a vows, like a Chaturmasya vows on the Ashada nakshatra, not Ashada month. It takes you back to 14,000 years. If you look at the other descriptions of the pole stars of a Ramayana times, do you know one thing, that the pole star Agastya is not always a pole star, or Canopus. During Ramayana times, one had to go all the way to the south tip of India, like a Kanyakumari, to see Agastya. Now we can see even from Delhi. Okay, that's Sugriva is describing that. Only when you go to that tip of India, that is when you will able to see Agastya. That's what he's saying. Okay, so why is that? Because at the time of Ramayana, Agastya was a south pole star and Brahma Rashi was a north pole star. Okay, so this is here. This is a Brahma Rashi or a Abhijit. This is a Agastya, and this is the point of a pole point. So they were close here. Okay, this is in the north and this is in the south. These descriptions are there in the Ramayana. These descriptions are there in a Surya Siddhanta, a totally different text. And we can validate that with all the 600 plus references. So I'll go fast through this. We did the same thing, what we did for our Mahabharata, same thing we do for Ramayana. But before going into astronomy, I put the geology data. I put the river data. And that tells us that the Ramayana is not possible before 13,000 BC. Ramayana is not possible before 15,000 years ago. And this could be a provoking moment for some of you. If you have heard and you are convinced, oh, it happened millions of years ago, multi-million years ago. If it happened, I have no problem with it. Just there is no evidence. There is no evidence in the Valmiki Ramayana. In fact, Valmiki Ramayana evidence is very clear why it cannot happen before 14,000 years ago, 15,000 years ago, why it cannot happen before 50,000 years ago. Forget millions of years. Okay. And if you have a question, we'll get into question answer session. So then we use the astronomy evidence. I'll go fast through this. and it gives us a one specific year, just like I showed you for Mahabharata, 12,209 BC, for the year of Ram Ravan Yuddha. Now, what is your option? This is my, I think, last slide. You can listen to this, you can accept it with a Shraddha and start sharing with others, perfectly fine. But you know what? In a scientific fashion, our new scientific minds, and that's a good thing. It's not new. That is what the Indian tradition demands. Don't take anything blindly. Nyaya Darshana says no claim is intrinsically valid. It has to be verified. It has to be validated. Okay. Now, sometimes we can validate by simply asking our parents. Sometimes we can validate by asking the experts. But if the two experts start disagreeing, then you have to jump in to figure out what is the truth. Okay. You can study deeply and be convinced about what I am claiming. But you don't have to stop there. You can critique it. You said, Nilesh, this doesn't make sense to me. I don't agree with it. Brutally and logically critique what I am saying. But your action is important. You blindly believing something or not doing anything is not an option for Indians, not an option for Hindus. Okay, or you can even present an alternate and superior claim, just like what I did. You may say, well, Nilesh may be better, but I have something better than that. And that's a welcome thing. That is our Indian tradition. Yaskacharya, while defining Sanatana Vedic Dharma, right, we call it, but Sanatana, do you know what he says? Sanatano Nitya Nutana. Sanatano, by definition, is one that is capable and willing to refresh itself in the presence of new evidence. Okay, and then, but of course, some people just don't do any of these four. Then jokingly, I say in a corporate speak, okay, take a hike, which is to say politely saying get lost, right? Okay. These are my books. If you are in India, this is through subupublications.com. You can order online, but most of us are in America here, I presume. So if you are interested, the books I'm saying, you can go to Amazon and you can purchase those. With that, I will stop sharing it. Let me see. And how many minutes I went over? I went over about 10 minutes or so. My apologies. With that, if we have any time, we can get into questions, Vicky ji.
Yeah, sure. I think there was a question in the chat. If you want to, where does the Harappa civilization fit in with this timeline?
Okay.
It's
Yeah,
from
very good question.
Anuprabha.
I mean, yeah. So what is a Harappa civilization? This is it's like giving naming. The naming is a confusing one, and that's why we ask this question. And the question is reasonable, question is right, but that comes from this confusion of the naming. The Western style, and I'm not trying to show like Western versus Eastern. No, I mean that's not my most part was a Bible. That was the history. They will give the name of that place and they will call that a civilization. Giraffe civilization, Mesopotamian civilization, Egyptian civilization. So when they dug something in Harappa, actually it was an Indian team, but monitored by British, they found something, they call it Harappa civilization. If they dig something in Mohenjo-daro, they will call it Mohenjo-daro civilization. What is it? It's an Indian civilization. Okay, that's what we are finding. Now, what is the timing of Harappa civilization? Let's call it Indus Valley civilization, or even more appropriate, Sindhu Saraswati civilization. What we have archaeologically found so far runs from 7000 BC to 1800 BC. Now, if you look at the chart I showed you, starting with 21st century, going back to at least 24,000 years and more. So answer is Harappa civilization fits beautifully like a one small piece of a jigsaw puzzle. That is the answer. It's part of Hindu civilization, Indian civilization. All right, that is the only question. Thank you.
Is there any questions, anybody? Any
Yeah,
other question?
I had one question, Nilesh. So the list of questions you put in, like, it was too quick for me to make a note of. Like, when someone asks me, like, if I'm pointing to your, pieces you have educated us, through this or any other videos. So there were a list of questions you have provided. So where can I get those?
Okay, yeah, I mean, I will send the easy way for me would be to send the presentation to Vikiji, my PowerPoint presentation, and he can circulate. Do you guys have email chain or something like this, or you can find out a way to get that? Okay, it's easy for me to send it to one person so that 10 people don't send me emails, like asking for the presentation. So Vikiji, I'll send it to you and you can circulate. Okay.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll do that.
And I think you did wonderful job. Congratulations. And I have seen some of your videos in YouTube, and this is wonderful. And I was wondering, how did you learn Sanskrit so well?
Okay. Any salespeople in our audience today besides me? No, that is actually the answer. No, I'm jokingly saying this, by the way. But this is a humorous part. No, I'm a salesperson. Most of my career in the General Electric or otherwise was in sales. And you don't get to say the no answer. He says, do you have this product? And the answer is yes, of course, right? You go to a sari shop in India, the sari seller, when the ladies come and ask, do you have this sari with the yellow flowers and this kind of thing, then the person never says, we don't have it. He will show you 10 saris. Now, I'm just jokingly saying this. This Sanskrit is, knowing Sanskrit is important. I don't think it is on a priority list. If you want to do research in a Indic history or any subject that is Indic, knowing Sanskrit, I don't think in a priority list is number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, or even number 5. That is not, I'm not discouraging anyone from learning Sanskrit. In fact, I learned, so to answer your question, Rajji, I learned Sanskrit on my own. I don't know, but most of the Indians, it's not difficult to learn Sanskrit. I mean, you just read something, you usually understand 20-30%. Most of the words are similar. And depending on your language, maybe say Tamil might feel a little bit challenge. But say Gujarati, Marathi, Hindi, Bangla, Punjabi, okay, I mean, you will find many words are very, very similar. So many times I don't know how I understand it. So if I read this, by the first reading of a Mahabharata or Ramayana is even easier. I get it like 60, 70, 80%, just like that. I still don't understand the Sanskrit grammar, meaning I have to take a reference of a book. So it's important, but I don't think it's a priority. Because I know many people who know Sanskrit well, but they still cannot do this kind of research. And I don't mean just the kind of research I am doing, but even the kind of research, for example, if you have heard the name Shrikant Talagiri, another wonderful researchers, okay, or Anil Narayanan, or Mrs. Rupa Bhati, Jeevan Rao. I mean, I can give you many names. They may know Sanskrit, but most of them are self-taught. But I don't think Sanskrit is the most important thing, at least for this kind of research. You need to have a very solid background into the scientific method, solid background into Tarka Shastra. Just honesty into sense like, you're not going to justify anything. If you don't know the answer, you have that courage to say, I don't know, or I'm totally clueless, or I am wrong, or I was wrong, or I can be wrong. And then learning Sanskrit is useful. But I taught myself, and I keep on, I have now that I'm a little bit famous, I have access to some good Sanskrit professors who are willing to help me. Okay, so if I need help, I take their help. So say Professor Gauri Mahulikar, if you have heard the name, she was the head of University of Mumbai Sanskrit department. Now she's a dean at Chinmaya Vishwavidyapeth. Professor V.N. Jha, Vasishtha Narayan Jha in Pune, he's a 70-plus-year-old. So they help me. There are many others who help me.
Yeah, I worked at GE also. It's connected in New York.
Well, yeah, I work in Atlanta. I mean, I am in Atlanta, Powers,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I used to, yeah.
Okay, I was at their R&D center.
Oh, yes, beautiful. The Thomas Edison's desk and everything, so very good.
Yeah.
I have one question.
Yeah, please go ahead, Joshiji.
This dating you did based on the planet positions, but to do that, you use some kind of software or model, I assume. Right?
Yes, software helps.
Which one?
You don't have to have a sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
So how do you know that astronomical model you have put together has been accurate enough, or which one did you use? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Great question. There are no there may be, just like, say, to type some document. Okay, we might use now it is come down to Word and Google. But say, if you remember, Word Perfect was there, and there was a Word, okay, or it was Excel and 1, 2, 3. You may use different softwares. That is not the point. I think the background algorithms must be same or similar or identical.
Correct.
So Surya Siddhanta has got formulas. Just a quick digression. Until Western Europe became familiar with Surya Siddhanta, which was about 400, 500 years ago, they could not imagine that you can do the astronomy calculations by formulae. They were only doing by the geometric methods. Also, Indians were also using geometric methods, and everyone else. But Surya Siddhanta formulas are formulas. You can plug in the numbers and get the position. So the reason I'm saying that is the formulas existed for a long time. So you have a choice. You can actually do these calculations by hand mathematically, but software makes it easy.
Yes.
Okay, so yeah, so there are many softwares. Some softwares better than others. Like what softwares I used are in my books. But I'm saying you can validate those. But Joshiji, you ask a wonderful question. I'm going to use this moment to tell you something else. Tell all of us something else. Whereas we use the modern astronomy software, say NASA data, the Hubble telescope data, and the algorithms that they have done, that I used to determine the dating of Mahabharata and dating of Ramayana. But Ramayana and Mahabharata also have something to give it back to modern astronomy. And do you know what it is? Because just like you asked the question, you did not quite ask that, but actually it's there inherent, which is to say how confident we can be that these modern astronomy softwares are valid going back 5,000 years, going back 10,000 years, going back 15,000 years, and also going forward. Well, we can do something, but we need some data to validate that. And guess what? Now, if all of us, you truly understand, you should get a goosebump moment. This is the goosebump moment. I showed you two types of data, one in the blue and one in the orange. Now, the way the data works, both are astronomy, but they are decoupled from each other. Because one is the very broad nakshatra-based data that has nothing to do with the solar system, because that's why we are using nakshatra as a reference system. The precession of equinoxes and all that is a nakshatra-based data. And the movements of the planets and everything is a solar system-based data. So they are both astronomy, but they are decoupled from each other. Now, Ramayana and Mahabharata, the information, the astronomy references in them act like a golden standards. Like when we do the calibration of equipment, we use the standard weights, we use the standards to see if the equipment gas chromatograph is working fine or not, my weighing balance is working fine or not. The Ramayana and Mahabharata evidence acts like a golden standard to validate the efficacy, efficiency, stability, linearity of all modern astronomy softwares. Okay, it's the other way. Yes, we use the astronomy software to figure this out, but because these two things are decoupled, they also match for those dates. Otherwise, they would not have matched. The blue and orange wouldn't have come together for 5561 BC or 12,209 BC.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, there are some other questions here I see. What is karma and karma phala? Not directly, Manisha ji, not directly related to this, but I'll give a quick short answer. So karma is an action, like something that you do, okay, kruti. But you may do the action and you may still not get the outcome that you want, or even an undesired outcome. Nothing may happen. Okay, just nothing may happen. Like you try to create a fire with a matchbox, okay, and if the matchstick doesn't work. So you did the action, but the outcome did not come. You might have also heard the word phala hetu. Okay, many times people miss that. The phala hetu, think of even the sequence. We got the fruit outcome, and now we can go backward, try to figure out what I must have done that led me to this, whether a good outcome or a bad outcome. So that's the difference between karma and karma phala. Karma think of as an action, karma phala is the outcome. What is prarabdha and purushartha? Prarabdha, think of this as a bank balance that came from, the ancestral bank balance that was given to you. And just not in terms of money, but in terms of the circumstances, the intellect, the place and whatnot. And purushartha is what you do with it. Okay. Difference between faith and eternal. Now, that is not even a good comparison. I don't know faith and eternal. You might mean fate, like, what happens to us versus eternal. Still, I would not understand. But if you want to take faith in the sense of a shraddha, then there is a wonderful quote of Joseph Campbell, if you have heard the name, a great American. And he has said, I don't need faith because I have evidence. So need of shraddha is there until we have a pratyaksha praman, until a personal experience. Once we have a personal experience, we don't need a shraddha. It's like a scaffolding, right? It's like a scaffolding when the house is being built, or a concrete, initially it needs the support until it dries out. But then you can take away the support. But support you need nevertheless. When we are making a murti of a Ganesha, Ganesh Chaturthi, they use the mold. But once the murti is ready and dry, then you can remove the mold. So shraddha acts like that. So shraddha is very important to do the activity. Not related to what we discussed today, but I just added few words on that.
I have a question. I think that this is, your research and your dedication is remarkable. I think being a chemical engineer, I also come from UDCT, and I don't think that I have that much time even to think about what you have done. So I really appreciate the amount of research and your dedication. I don't think there are many people who would take as much effort and time and delve into so much details really to do the type of work. This requires, it is not monetarily motivated. It's really because you have a passion for it. And I think we need people like that who are so passionate about some subject matter. So I do appreciate that. But let me ask you a question, which is maybe a devil's advocate. You talked about shraddha, and it is obviously a belief in something. So what if Ramayana and Mahabharata never happened? Really, it is just a story which is written, and it is not really the truth.
Okay, what if, like, what would be my position, you want to know, or what do we do?
I'm not, those books are important, obviously, in India, because obviously they provide us with a framework of the history. Clearly you cannot imagine everything, so there has to be some historical context. But it might be just a story. Ram was never existed. There was no Bhishma. There is no Pandav Kaurav, and just it was a story, but good story, but it's a story.
Yeah. No, great question, Mohanji. Did I interrupt you? Like you wanted to say something? No, okay. For example, a great question for this reason, like, it helps us to distinguish between the religions and a dharma, for example. If you take a religions, and when we talk of religions, typically in an Abrahamic sense, say, think of Judaism, Christianity, Islam. Okay, if you take away the 10 commandments or the Old Testament, the Judaism would be wondering, now what? If you take the New Testament, okay, the Jesus, the importance of Jesus, his sacrifice, resurrection, all that thing, what is required, the Nicene Council memorandum, then they will be saying, now what? What do I do? Like the Forrest Gump movie, this Forrest Gump stops running and people are following him, and he says, I'm going home. And now they are like, without any basis, what to do, right? Or Islam, if you take away the Quran and the Muhammad and whatnot, Allah, then what do we do? So for a minute, let's assume that what you said, as a devil's advocate, what you said is correct. It wouldn't, who was our Raj Singh was from G, as Jack Welch used to say, you won't hear a flinch. Nothing would change, nothing would matter. Something he would say when we were going through acquisitions and whatnot. Nothing, because the three foundations, if you look at, and I showed that briefly, I didn't spend time, it is a Vichar Swatantra, freedom of thought. It is the conviction into niti, which is absolute morals, which is ahimsa, satyam, asteya, kama, krodha, lobhata. And then tantra yukti, which is the endurance in conduct. Like guys, kruti is important. That is what Krishna is emphasizing. And you can recreate everything. You can learn from it. For example, Bhagavad Gita also. Now, of course, Bhagavad Gita comes from that Mahabharata, but the one statement it says what? Where is the Vedas? Where is the knowledge? Okay, and it says Urdu Mulam Adasakam Ashwastam Prauravyam Chandansi Yasya Parnani. It says, don't go look for a knowledge in the book. It says it is to be seen in the nature through the branches and through the leaves. Or if you go to the other wisdom, Brahma Bindu Upanishad, okay, it says Grantham Abhyasya Medhavi Jnana Vijnana Tatpara Palalamiva Dhanyarthi Tejet Grantham Asheshata. He says once you find the use out of it, basically throw away the books. It is asking you to throw away all the books. So that will include even Mahabharata and Ramayana, but not prematurely. Okay, once their purpose is done. Again, these were used as a supporting material. But if you remove those, I mean, again, Mohanji, think of as a regression. We do the stepwise regression. We take away a certain data point, or we take away a certain variable, and we rerun the regression to see what is the effect of that. So my broad answer would be, these are wonderful texts. These are wonderful repositories of our Itihas. But if you remove them, as far as the Sanatan Dharma goes, it will do just fine. In fact, we have lost many things that even we don't know that we have lost, and that hasn't necessarily affected us.
Thanks, Nileshji. I think we'll take one last question. I think there is
Sure.
one question in the chat box. What are your thoughts on Aryas and origins of Aryan philosophy?
Okay, so Nilesh Shukla ji, I would say instead of giving a long answer, go to YouTube, type Nilesh Oak and Aryan invasion theory or AIT. You're going to see a few talks of mine, and it will answer that question quickly. Christopher Hitchens, a famous British atheist, if you would have heard that name, you know, Hitchens razor. Now, what is called Hitchens razor is also a Nyaya Darshana statement. You can go to Nyaya Darshana and look at chapter 4, 4.2.29 and 4.2.30. Okay, it says Pramana Tascha Arthascha Pratipatte. Okay, a thing is proved only through evidence. What Hitchens says, a claim that is made without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. The onus is not on you. The Aryan invasion theory, unfortunately, it is sitting in our books and, you know, it's not going out of it. But there is a zilch evidence for the arguments of Aryan invasion theory. The four key arguments are so-called, some people call Aryan came from outside India to inside India, sometime between 2000 BC to 1500, 1200 BCE. And they brought with them Sanskrit or precursor to Sanskrit, which was used afterwards to write Rigveda, Mahabharata, Ramayana, etc. What I just showed you today, everything that I discussed is long time before 2000 BC. What nonsense are they talking? There is zilch evidence for the four claims that are there. That is the answer. And we can just stop with that.
Sure. Thank you, Nileshji. I think we got almost close to 5:30.
Yeah.
We'd like to thank you so much for your time and excellent, knowledge that you have provided, and what a study and background that you brought. Wow, that was eye-opening for me. And like Mohanji said, I mean, you have done extensive research behind this. So thanks for putting this in just 1 hour. It is it's a lot to digest. So, but
True.
thank you very much and appreciate the time.
All right, and thank you everyone for taking time out from your Saturday afternoon, and stay safe, okay, stay healthy, and please take a small swadharma. That's something that is very, very eligible, something that you feel excited about as it relates to our civilization, and do something about it every day. Ask the question when you go to the bedtime, what did I do about that exciting thing that I feel excited about? I meaning you feel excited about. And if everyone does it, the magic happens. So thank you everyone again. Okay, thank you.
Thank you so
Thanks.
much. Yeah.